If our community says no, we don't want a nuclear, we don't want to even consider a nuclear power plant here, then I, for one, will drop it. If it's a handful of people that say that, then we're going to ask the majority to kind of step forward and give us their opinion. And if a number of people say, let's at least look at the option, then we're going to pursue it some more. But it's far from a done deal. I mean, there's places all over the country that want a nuclear plant, and those are typically places that already have one, which is interesting. There's one, as you know, just outside of in Scriba, not too far from Oswego. They're dying for another one. They're ready for another one. And they would be competing with us, quite frankly, and they're ready to go, and we're not. So, if it's something that we think we want to pursue, there's a lot of work to be done locally, but then we also have to find an energy company that may be interested in spending a few $1 billion in Massena to build a plant. And that's not easy to have. It's easy to find either. With the economy the way it is, a lot of these, as a matter of fact, we were talking to the congressman about it yesterday, and he said a number of the nuclear efforts aren't moving because the companies that build nuclear plants are having trouble getting financing because the banks are still sitting on their money. So we're hoping as the economy loosens up and some of that money loosens up, there'll be more money for investment, more money for development, and maybe we can interest someone in coming to Massena. We've been in the energy industry for a long time. We know about power. We have transmission lines. I've been told for years that 3 things you need for a nuclear plant is property, land to put it on, water for cooling it, and then distribution lines, electrical distribution lines, which we have. And again, some of our initial research, we need new distribution lines, and we need an upgrade of the distribution lines we have. And that's certainly something that we would be pushing the state and NIPA to look at if this becomes something the community wants to pursue. So,
get out the application.
I'm sorry?
Get out the application, sign it, and get it started.
If there was an application, we would do that, but it's not quite that easy. I wish it were. And again, we're just learning this stuff as we go along. What our plan is, if you see in the press release, we'd like to put together a working group of Massena people. If this is something that we want to pursue as a community, we'd like to put together a working group of people that are, I'm not talking 100 people, I'm talking 10 or 12 people maybe at the most. And we've already talked with a handful of people that have some background in energy, excuse me, and business development, and actually in nuclear. So an idea we're throwing out there, I guess, to the community, and we want to hear what people think.
If I could just add one thing. Sitting here listening to Joe, and he's right in everything he said, all too often we sat back as a community and watched other people develop. And we have to get our minds away from the vacuum of the 1950s way of thinking. People, there are communities that are passing us leaps and bounds today. And there are 13 of these things that are going to be built in the United States within the 10 years. Why not us? Why not us? No one wanted prison. But I'm going to tell you what, that was a hell of a thing to do to keep the Ogdensburg facilities open. It's just, it's the right thing to do right now, is to think this type of project. It's the wave of the future. And if we don't do it, trust me, there's going to be hundreds of communities that are going to be sitting around saying, give it to us. Give it to us. Like Joe had mentioned right now, and speaking with a fellow that is on our committee, the only people clamoring for them right now are the people that already have them. Go talk to the people down in the Oswego area, or Erie, Pennsylvania. Erie, who's already been approached on building one there again, another. Detroit, Sandusky, Ohio, a place in, where was it? I think in Massachusetts, has already been promised one. So the list is dwindling, and the time for us is now. For the future is now. Just like I said, we're apprehensive. People are apprehensive about the power authority, but it's here and it's generating.
How many jobs does it produce?
Can you hold off for just a second? I'd like to ask.
We're going to have a question and answer period.
I'd like to have the senator, if you want to have anything on the stage. We're kind of dumping all this on you all of a sudden.
I think I know why you had me here now, because I just got named the chairman of the banks committee, and he wants the banks.
Good segue.
these are very challenging times across the state, across all the communities in our state. But when we face these challenges, I believe there also are opportunities. And that is where we need to continue to do our best, come together, and I think that's what impresses me today, that you have a group of community leaders who are willing to think outside the box, who are willing to put forth the energy and the commitment and trying to look at possibilities, working as a region and as a team, because we understand now we're really, boundaries are there, but we're really an area, a geographic area. We need to work together. We can't be confined within a township or a village. It's all of us working as a North Country that can be successful. So I believe that energy obviously is extremely important. Energy independence for this nation, a comprehensive energy policy in this state, which we lack at this point in time, and they will have to address alternative sources of energy, like nuclear energy. They will have to discuss and evaluate how we produce that energy. We will have to figure out how we distribute that energy, because there's a great need. And obviously that is a very competitive resource when we look at how we're going to try to recreate an economic climate here that shows that New York is open for business, as the governor has said. So I think that this is a good effort, that the community leaders are willing to discuss a scenario and a possibility, and more importantly, that they're willing to engage the community, because I believe in that, and they're willing to involve and engage the community and say, let's make this a community decision so that we can move forward. Not everybody's going to agree, but if we can move forward with consensus and say, this is the project we like, this is a project we can embrace, and now we're going to compete. So I will do my best to work with your leadership as well as with the community, I've only been on the job of the bank's chair for a week, so give me a little time to be able to get done with this stuff.
We'll give you a couple more weeks.
All right.
Absolutely. Okay.
Actually, it's been a few days.
That's really, I can only answer so many questions. Like I said, I'm far from an expert in nuclear power, but I'll do my best. John McCauley, the town councilman, also is here. He has a question, I guess.
At first thought, it sounds like a great idea, what everybody's saying, and I am a proponent of nuclear. My oldest brother built nuclear power plants for Westinghouse Pettis, so he knows a lot about it. And my only comment, really, though, is kind of on the negative side. We had a no-brainer building a power dam on the Grass River. Absolute no-brainer. To think, kind of against what you said, Jimmy, we have had economic development projects around here, unbeknownst to a lot of people, that we got no help from New York State on. And it's an absolute no-brainer to put that power dam in. And after 5-6 years of bureaucratic nightmare in this state, it's fallen by the wayside. And it's a much easier project than the nuclear power plant. Much easier project. So my only concern, maybe Senator Grippo can respond to this, is what's the state going to do to try to help some projects like this get forward? Because, in my mind, that was a crime. Somebody in Albany ought to lose a job that we didn't get that project.
Well, you already did. You lost the governor, so that's a good thing. Now you have a new governor, and I've got to take him at his word that he's going to be willing and ready and energized to make the state agencies be more responsive and willing to work with communities and businesses, as opposed to finding ways to hinder the growth of those businesses and communities. So I'm hopeful, as he begins to name his department heads, that we hopefully can work together and try to create an atmosphere where, as I said, an agency is there to say, how can I help you get this done? Now, yes, there's regulatory issues, and you can work through those. But right now, the mindset has been, I'm going to find a way to stop you from doing something. And that's wrong, and that's what I've said during my 4 years in Albany. And I'm hopeful maybe with the new administration, there'll be a new approach, a new perspective. And at this point in time, I'm hopeful and encouraged. But we'll have to wait and see, and I think that that's a project that's worth revisiting again. But it wasn't only the DEC, there were other agencies and stuff involved too, and I don't know what the aspect the federal government played, so we've got to get it all together. You're right, when you have a good idea and a good project, we've got to make sure that the bureaucracy understands and supports that, as opposed to finding ways to stop it. So we'll do our best to continue to work that way, and I hope that the answer to the direct question, Councilman, is maybe the change of attitude comes with the change of administration, hopefully.
I'm going to answer your first question first, the second question first. How many jobs? It's just out there. We know probably by construction alone, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars coming in from people who have to move up here and help with the construction project. Again, I'm hoping it's probably on the same lines as the project with, probably not as massive, of course, as nightclub, but it'll bring a stream of people back into this area. To answer your first question.
Let me step in on the jobs,
Once it's
yeah.
done.
Once it's done.
I think that
Once it's done.
I think that has to do, depending on the size of the facility for one thing, Larry, but I think it's, I mean, ascribe it's gonna be a couple hundred jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think. And again, I'm not well versed in some of this stuff, but it's not 25 jobs to run a nuclear plant, it's a lot of
Because
people.
when they build it,
Right.
they need lots of people.
Right.
Yeah.
When they're done, they leave.
But what we're hoping, what we're hoping is like the field of dreams. You build it, they will come. Okay? Now, as far as profiting from it, I think we've learned in the past, through dealing with other state agencies or authorities, that, it's probably a look back and, lesson learned type thing. What we're hoping is that if in fact if this project does come to fruition, that we negotiate it, that Massena negotiates this, or along with some of the other communities, of course, that perhaps every 10 years or whatever, we look at what's happening and renegotiate. Obviously, we want the dollars to stay here in Massena and the surrounding area. Everybody has to buy into it. As far as, like Joe had mentioned, freewheeling of the power, perhaps again there's revenue stream that comes back to us.
And I think the short, quick answer to your question, Larry, is the company that builds the facility will make the money. That's the way it works, right? They're going to own the facility, they're going to make the profit. But the cost to produce the power means that the power isn't as expensive as other means of power. So that low-cost power, again, can roll over within our community, within the North Country, within the state, certainly, and the state needs more power. And with that availability of power, I think comes economic opportunity as well for companies that are looking for a better price than they can get, especially if they're energy-intensive businesses, if they need large amounts of power.
They're exclusionary. Now, you got to remember
You mean they're not
also,
allowed to fish in there?
you cannot go into those areas, period, for security reasons. Now, we already have that existing now, with that an exclusion area for Robert Moses Power Dam. That, incidentally, I used to enjoy quite a lucrative business in my sport fishing, but I can't go there anymore. So we've got to look at the pros and the cons, and there's going to be plenty to come along with it.
And that's again what the whole effort is about.
But my last comment is that when I read this in the paper this morning that there was going to be a meeting and there was going to be controversy surrounding it, and I didn't know what it was about, I reflected upon my town supervisor and my newly elected mayor that during the campaign we talked about our discord for public comment periods during working hours. And what did you do? People are at work, they're wondering what's going on. If we want to pursue this matter, open, honest, and frank discussions with public involvement during reasonable hours, not working hours.
We'll do that.
Let me say this though, because I think my perception is that what you're having here today is just two of your executive level elected officials just announcing to the public that they have an idea and that they want to move forward by involving the public in determining whether this idea should even be pursued. So today, I don't see this as an event where you're trying to gauge where do you stand on it, what do you think. This is just to say, hey, we're willing to look at an idea, and maybe somewhat controversial, and we want you to tell us what you think about it now. And we'll go through a whole process, and I can't speak for the mayor and the supervisor, but this is my understanding, that I think they're going to go through an exhaustive process of getting the community involved, looking at everything from the preliminary data that Joe stated today, shows that he's doing his homework already. But I see this today as only saying to everyone, hey, we have an idea. We want to let you know about it. Now we're going to tell you how we want to get you involved in helping us determine whether we should proceed. So I think you're not going to have an issue with that.
We need to get public discussion, and I
Absolutely,
agree with that
yeah.
100%, but things need to be suggested before we go further. Now, when you talk of this cross-section of community members that are going to be on that board, that brings into mind to me this cooperative consultation process that we went
Well,
through.
look, I'm not gonna go down that road with you. I'm not gonna go down that road with you. I mean, that's a whole different deal. That is what, that happened as it happened. This is a whole different thing. The two things I wanna say. As the senator said, it was an announcement to reach out to the public. To do that, we need cameras and recorders. Their deadlines are relatively early for 6 o'clock news. So we had to do it at 2:30 in the afternoon or earlier. So that's the timing, quite frankly, that's part of the timing involved here. It's media driven. That may sound bad, but that's the truth of the matter. Those of you who know me, I think know that I'm going to tell you the real deal. And the real deal is that. That's why we timed it, so we can get some media attention, we can get some media coverage, to get more people, not to make us look good, to get more people aware of the fact of what we're talking about. Second thing I want to mention real quickly, the fault line, you're absolutely right. Google Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor. See where it's located, see how close to a fault it is in the Rocky Mountain.
I thank you for bringing that forward.
First step on a very long journey. Let's see if we're going to take, how many more steps we're going to take. We need to decide that as a community. But some good points. Thank you. Charlie.
Nuclear energy is going to be what's going to happen in this country for energy, an energy source. We, for many decades, discounted nuclear energy as bad. That's all. You don't see any discussion on the news at all about promoting the nuclear energy or clean coal. I don't think there is such a thing, but I just heard that phrase. But nuclear energy is where our energy is going to come from in the future. And I think you're right that we need to look at this alternative, and we're finally talking about it again. We have nuclear submarines, we have nuclear aircraft carriers. I mean, these things are real today, and we don't need a 3-mile island. They've got cookie-cutter nuclear power plants. They got a plan. You can buy this book, and they're all the same, and they produce energy, and they're doing very well in Europe and other places in the world. Initially, I think that, when you said, well, the folks elected you to do certain things, I don't expect you to bring jobs here. What I expect you to do is create an environment so that people with capital can be interested in coming to Massena and investing here so that they can, in hope, make a profit, like somebody mentioned before. That's what I view your job is, and not to have all the ideas, because you don't.
Right.
And so, it's nice that this idea came across. I think it's refreshing because nuclear energy is not a new idea, but to have the courage to bring it up and say, hey, what do you folks think? And, when I read in the paper that it was going to be controversial, and you know how I like to avoid that, I thought I'd show up. Anyways, good luck on that.
In the Western Hemisphere that makes radioactive isotopes that are used in medicine all over the world. It shut down about a year ago. Hospitals, upstate medical center, places like that all over were rationing their tests using radioactive isotopes. They just went back online again. The government of Canada got pushed really, really hard by a lot of Americans and everybody else to get that going. I do not know enough about reactors, the difference between that kind of reactor, or if you can make power and do that also. But there's another way of looking at it. There's a terrific market for all these radioactive isotopes that are used in medicine, for heart work, and all kinds of stuff. Another way of talking to people is, see, if you don't want to go power, go ever, because we're going to get Quebec people, all their hydropower in northern Quebec, they're shipping down here through Vermont all the way down to the East Coast. They spent billions, and they're still spending billions, on the rock up in Newfoundland, Labrador, and in James Bay and Hudson Bay. They're still building huge, huge facilities, hydro. It's not going into Quebec, believe me, it's coming to the United States.
Yeah, we need more and more energy every day. There's no two ways about it. Come and say, you know what? We're going to host a thing. We ask you to come here. You're going to make all kinds of money. You're going to spend a bunch of money, but you're going to make a bunch of money. We need something in return. And I think that's when we were in the driver's seat at that point. Yes, sir.
As far as the snowball effect of business is concerned, there's one good example south of us that you can take advantage of when you go there, if you go there, and that's called Fort Drum. 25 years ago, I was involved quite heavily as a community representative in doing the same thing you're doing here. And there was quite a bit of discussion. If you go down there now, I don't think that discussion as far as negativism is even going to come up, because that's the most prolific area in northern New York. The mall is expanding tremendously. Hotels are being built. Restaurants are thriving. Downtown Watertown is okay. And Arsenal Street looks like, you know,
Las
you won't
Vegas.
believe it. It's one indication of how business will come. Like you said, if you build it, they will come. That reminds me of a movie, but I won't get into that. But at any rate, there's a good example. So if you're worried about anything, and this does come to pass, just take a drive south about 100 miles, and you'll see everywhere from Loudville north, Teresa, Philadelphia, the Bay, everybody is taking advantage of it in a very positive manner and enjoying themselves.
Good, thanks, appreciate that.
And you have our time anytime you want, all the time you want.
Appreciate that, Karen. Okay.
Press.
Oh, yeah, we have to deal with them, I guess. Well, ladies first, Brian. Rachel.
I know that you said this is a long time ahead of Massena, but when you picture what's going to happen, what's your vision if this plant is built in this area?
What's my vision as far as our community, what happens to our community?
Yes.
I would hope that we're going to see some ancillary growth, and I'm sure there are businesses that would look for a reliable source of reasonably priced electricity. There are undoubtedly some suppliers that the plant itself will need. Again, I'm still sort of learning this as I go along, and we haven't delved real deeply into this. We're just scratching the surface. So, but I think obviously, anytime you get new money in the community with new jobs, those dollars turn over and over and over. And restaurants benefits, and restaurants benefit, and convenience stores benefit. So it's that kind of economic turnover that we need, and new money coming into the community. And that's my hope, is that if we were to pursue this and it comes to fruition, there would be a whole bunch of new money coming into the community.
Now, for community members who weren't here today and they want to reach out to you, they read in the paper, they see it on the stage, what can they do? Can they call your office?
Absolutely. Call the mayor's office, call the supervisor's office, the mayor's office, 769-8625, right? Mayor, 315, very good. Supervisor, 769-3588. Drop us an email. You can find us on the website easily as far as our email address. We'd love to hear from folks.
If I may, we'll be setting up periodic meetings for informational also. But just if I may, again, if anybody has been following the new governor.
Great idea. We have a toxic business environment in this state. People don't want to move here, so even though the power may be available and it may be cheap, it may be too damned expensive to do business in this state anyways, even if you can get free power. So those are the things that the three of you need to work on. And because it doesn't seem to be changing very rapidly, and we do need some revolutionary change. The evolution is just not fast enough.
You sound like you listened to what I'm saying. I said that throughout last fall, and I've said it over the last 2 years. We don't only need change, we need dramatic and substantive change. And we need it in tax relief, we need it in regulatory reform, we need it in lower utility costs. These are the kind of things, when all put together as a package, will make this state again competitive and attractive for business. And I'm hopeful, as I said, with the new governor and a new legislature, that people can find common ground and work towards that result. That's what people in the state expect. They want a result. Regardless of where you stand philosophically or politically, get something done. And let's get something done that will be in the best interest of all the communities we represent across the entire state.
And you know the other thing, Charlie, if we don't rapidly change the way we do things, we're going to be in heap of more trouble than we're in right now.
That's right.
I mean, the state is falling apart because our economy isn't strong enough. And it's not just because of the economic downturn across the country and worldwide. It's because New York State has not been a friendly place to do business. So I hope that I think they're getting the message. As soon as the senator's been talking about it, Governor Cuomo's not talking about it. We have to change things in the state, or we need to roll up the shades. Pull down the shades because we're going to be done.
Well, if we don't, our community is going to look just like that painting.
No cars on the street, right?
I always like to draw attention to that because I do not want Massena to look like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, everybody's talked about the power plant itself. What is your timeline on this committee itself? When do you when are you perceiving it's going to begin and get names in, and when is this working group going to be effective?
I would hope we would get a committee together within the next 2 months and start going. We need to move. We're going to do what we need to move. But again, before we form the committee, we've got to make sure people want to come in. And we're hearing some positive comments back today. We may find out that my inbox is going to be filled tomorrow with people saying, "What are you, nuts?" So we'll see what happens.
More than usual.
I made the comment in the paper today that 20% were against and maybe 80% for. I'm hoping the 80% are.
Yeah, and I hope your 80-20 is right.
If I can just interject again, because I represent both central and northern New York, and I'm a former mayor too, and it was a similar situation down in the central New York area after one of the military installations, Griffiths, closed. There was an opportunity with the National Institutes of Health and other groups to form a special biolab, but it was a controversial decision. And I remember embarking similar to what Jim and Joe are doing right now. First, letting people know that this is out there. This is something we should probably explore, but more importantly, as a community, are we willing to embrace this? And then it was a competition across the nation, and Boston won the competition. Boston wanted it, and there were a number of cities that competed, but at least we were in the game. Once the community decided they wanted to compete, then we went in and competed, and that's, I think, what I'm seeing here today. First, you start with the concept. You know that there's something out there. Now, your leaders have said this is something I think we should explore. If the community says we agree with you, then you begin to put it together and you compete, and we'll do our best to work with you to try to make sure that you are competitive. But there's never a guarantee. But if you don't, I just turned to the mayor and I said, it's the old saying, the old ancient Chinese proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.